Good afternoon. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
It's Benjamin Kaufman, Benjamin Kaufman.
And your date of birth, sir?
September 10th, 1984.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an emergency medicine doctor.
How long have you been doing that?
About 12 years.
Could you briefly describe for the jurors your educational and training background that qualifies you for that role?
Yeah, I went to Boston University for medical school, and then Kings County for residency training, and then Columbia for fellowship in global emergency medicine.
And where do you currently work?
Beth Israel in Plymouth.
And back in January of 2023, did you work there?
I did.
And specifically on January 24th, 2023, were you working that evening?
I was.
And while you were working that evening, did you treat a patient named Lindsay Clancy?
Yes, that was my patient.
And do you recall how he arrived at the hospital?
Yes, with the EMS, with CPR ongoing.
And is it typical that when EMS arrive with a patient, they give you kind of a summary or a rundown of the patient's condition?
It is.
And did they give you that rundown on Callan's condition?
They did. He, at the time, his heart had stopped and CPR was ongoing, and he was not breathing. He was receiving breaths via bag valve mask ventilation.
And what did you do in terms of treating Callan?
So as soon as he came in, basically we put in a breathing tube, and we were able to get an IV established. The first thing that we do is give a dose of epinephrine. And in this case, you can look directly at the heart with an ultrasound, and his heart started beating after we were able to give that dose. At that point, we continued compressions, continued giving him breaths through the breathing tube. And Plymouth Hospital does not have pediatrics or the ability to care for that level of pediatric patients. So we're on the phone with Boston Children's Hospital, making preparations basically to get him to the more definitive care.
And about how long into your care of Callan did he regain a heartbeat?
Probably from the time that he got to the ER, maybe like 10 minutes or so, I'm guessing.
At any point in time, did he regain the ability to breathe on his own while he was in your care?
No.
Did you do any examination or testing to determine Callan's brain function?
So at no point did he exhibit any brain function. I'm not like a neurologist, so we are not the definitive person, but in emergency medicine, there's a scale called the Glasgow Coma Scale, which is generally from 3 to 15. There's different variations for pediatrics, but he scored the lowest, which basically is you're in a coma or have no brain response during the entire time that he was in my care.
So on that scale, the 3 to 15, 15, would that be someone who's walking and talking and acting normally?
That's correct.
And a 3, is that someone with no brain function?
That is correct.
And you testified that Callan was at a 3 when you treated him?
At no time during his care did he have any brain function that was evident on my exam.
And at some point in time, was it decided to transfer his care to Boston Children's Hospital?
Yes, we were in contact with him basically immediately, and then he was flown by helicopter to Boston Children's Hospital, and the whole time the ICU doctors were on the phone reviewing the case and making recommendations.
And at any point in time, to your knowledge, from the time he entered the emergency department at Beth Israel Deaconess Plymouth until he arrived at Boston Children's Hospital, was he able to breathe on his own?
No.
Thank you, doctor.
All right, counsel.
I have no questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, doctor. Attorney Buckingham.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth would call Melissa Arcadipane.
Good to see you. Watch your step, please. Hi, good afternoon. Attorney Buckingham, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Could you please tell the jurors your first and last name?
Melissa Acadipane,
Can you spell your last name for the record?
Arcadipane.
And did you work for South Shore Hospital?
Yes.
And what was your role at South Shore Hospital?
My last role was a supervisor of the specimen processing department in the laboratory.
And do you still work in that role?
No.
Back in 2023, specifically January, were you in that role?
Yes.
And how long had you worked for, or have you worked for South Shore Hospital over the course of the years?
Over 20 years.
You said that you were the specimen processing supervisor?
Correct.
What are the general responsibilities for that role?
Overseeing the department where all of the specimens from within the hospital and even outside of the hospital will come in through that department to be received, checked, make sure they have orders, make sure they're collected in the correct tube.
And the laboratory at South Shore Hospital is responsible for processing blood samples, urine samples that come from other areas of the hospital, correct?
Correct.
So can you just generally tell us how a blood or urine sample would come from the emergency department at South Shore Hospital to the laboratory?
So in most cases, blood sample or urine will come through a pneumatic tube system from the emergency room. They'll put it in a tube, hit a button, and it will come over to the lab, which is what's across the street. And we would take it out of that canister and process it at that point.
And the specimens that are collected in a place like the emergency department are done by a nurse or technician who takes the samples, puts them in the appropriate vial or tube, and labels them, correct?
Correct.
And so when they come to you through that pneumatic system, what does your laboratory do with the samples?
Well, we check the sample, make sure it's labeled, make sure it's in the correct tube, and then we would process it.
And traditionally, would your laboratory receive several samples, meaning several vials of blood or urine from one patient?
They could, yes.
And as far as the orders for testing, you at the laboratory would only run particular tests that are ordered by a physician, correct?
Correct.
Does that usually consume the whole sample that you receive from the emergency department?
Not always, no.
And so would it be a common procedure that samples from a particular patient would be retained in case additional testing needed to be done?
Yes.
And working in the lab as the specimen processing supervisor, are you familiar with what is referred to as a preservation notice?
I am.
What do you know that to be?
So that is a notice that we would receive from a law enforcement agency asking us to hold specific samples for a particular patient.
And what would your laboratory do when you receive a preservation notice for a particular patient?
So the samples would be pulled aside, they would be put in a specimen bag, a copy of that preservation notice gets put in the bag with the samples, and it is put in a separate bin within the specimen refrigerator.
And the specimen refrigerator, is that a place that specimens are stored until they're either used or discarded?
Correct.
And does that preserve the specimen?
Well,
Meaning
they need to be refrigerated. So, but we separate those specimens that potentially could be needed elsewhere into a separate spot so that they don't get discarded.
Now, were you aware that a preservation notice had been served on South Shore Hospital for the blood and urine of Lindsay Clancy on January 24th, 2023?
I was.
And were those samples of blood and urine collected in the same manner you just described and put in a separate bin?
Yes.
And on January 31st, 2023, did you have the opportunity to interact with a trooper from the Massachusetts State Police?
I did.
And what was that interaction? Can you describe it to us?
He came with a warrant to collect the specimens.
And so did you collect the specimens that were labeled for Lindsay Clancy?
I did. Somebody had already put them in that bin in a bag, so I just went to the bin, retrieved them, made sure they were hers, and gave them to the officer.
And in fact, you handed over 6 vials of blood and 1 vial of urine to the trooper on that day, correct?
I don't remember the exact samples or sample type that I handed over, but I do know that I gave him samples.
Okay, and as far as your memory, you recall that you double-checked the ID label on the items to make sure that they belong to Lindsay Clancy, correct?
Definitely.
Okay. Nothing further, thank you.
Counsel?
No questions, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.